Okay, we're live.
Okay, so we're going to go over for a minute the, I'm sorry, another reason. My apologies. Going to go over for a minute what we started learning last week, and this is all taking us in Rav Tzadok to one shita of Rav Tzadok, which I hope I'm clarifying, but one thing's for sure, it's becoming clearer and clearer in my own mind as to the Yesod of Rav Tzadok, and what we're learning now really is the Yesod HaGimel. I don't mean the third Yesod, but I mean the Yesod of Gimel, the Yesod of the three in this trifecta that goes on in the Bria, which is fascinating in all. This is clear, very clear and prominent in the thinking of Rav Tzadok HaKohen, and very, very, I believe, very essential to his whole thinking, if I'm permitted to say. But we started learning, you have the sheet in front of you, the pre-Tzaddik, and the background, of course, is the Eliyahu Hanavi. That Eliyahu Hanavi came to Har Sinai, and there on Har Sinai, he had the one of the most exciting, if I'm permitted to say, prophecies in history, where Hashem appeared to him, and he saw it first as he came out of this cave, which was the cave of Moshe Rabbeinu, and there was a huge Ruach Shever Slayim, a great hurricane or a tornado which came, and it was shattering rocks and it was breaking things. And you know, if we would be in that on Har Sinai, as I mentioned last week, if we would be standing on Har Sinai and Hashem says stand here, and all of a sudden the whole mountain starts to shake, there's earthquakes and ruach, and so certainly we would think that that's Hashem. And to this Hashem said, Lei beruach Hashem, that's not Hashem. Achar Ruach Eish, says the Malachim Aleph Yutes, Achar Ruach Rash. There was a Rash. Rash is thunder. Rash, according to Tosfos, means Re'idas Ha'adama, pandemonium, tumult, noise. Okay, this must be Hashem. Loi barash Hashem. Hashem says, no, that's not Hashem. And all of a sudden, like by Har Sinai, all these things happen in Har Sinai, as I'll show you. On Har Sinai, and over here, the mountain started to burn. Everything was on fire. Okay, that's got to be God. Loi b'eish Hashem. And the Torah reports what then is HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How does it appear? How does Hashem appear to me? Called the Mamadaka. And with a very silent, a kol, seems like it's a kol. There is a sound to it. It's called Mamadaka. I want to point out before I go any further, because there was confusion about this, that
Some people are waiting to get into
you know, we need some volunteers here. I'm sorry. Next time. Somebody's got to take care of the Zoom. That's all. But it's people misunderstood or misunderstand that by the time we get to the Kol Mamadaka, the story of Eliyahu Hanavi, okay, that's Hashem. That's also not Hashem. Hashem is Leis Machshav Tfisa, not us, not Eliyahu Hanavi. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, who went through these same stages, said finally, okay, Hareini na eskvaitcha espanecha, and Hashem said, it can't be. Adam. So again, we're talking about something in Atzilus, but we're not talking about Hashem. So we have to get, even Eliyahu Hanavi didn't experience face-to-face Hashem. But one thing's for sure, that the Ruach, the Rash, and the Eish, that was not Hashem. What was it? If it wasn't Hashem, what was it? And here Rav Tzadok comes with his chiddush, and I just want to explain this in a very deep but simple way. These three things, Ruach, Rash, and Eish, were not the Kol Mamadaka, but as Rav Tzadok says over and over and over again, but don't minimalize them, because they are the doorways into the Kol Mamadaka. meaning you can't just go to the Kol de Mamadaka. You have to go via the Ruach, the Rash, and the Eish. And there's very simple levels of this, like, people first get into Torah, they're all for tumult, and they're all kanoim, and they're getting all excited, whereas you see the seasoned Talmud Chacham is not that way. The seasoned Talmud Chacham has patience for everybody and tolerance, and he's like the Kol Mamadaka in this world. It's like Hashem talking. If you get to meet a true Gadol B'Yisrael, it's like the closest thing you're going to get to Hashem, because it's Kol Mamadaka. It's everything's quiet, everything is relaxed, but that takes time and a lot of learning and a lot of avoda to get there. So Reb Tzadok teaches us that on the one hand, you're not there if you're making a big rash or if you're shover slayim. On the other hand, you can't avoid those steps. If you avoid the steps, you're not going to ever get there. You can't just go, I'm just going straight to the Kol Mamadaka. So I guess that every once in a while, people have to assess their own madrega and say, well, am I holding now by Ruach? Am I holding now by Rash? Am I holding now by Eish? Or am I up to Kol Mamadaka? This even goes together with the madregas of age that happen in Pirkei Avos.
Should we intentionally try to go on those steps, or just reach for Kol Mamadaka?
It's an excellent question. Obviously, the reach is Kol Mamadaka. I think the chiddush of Reb Tzadok is that we don't get upset with ourselves if we're full of Eish. Eish means, what's the simple pshat in Eish is we lose our temper when people are doing things wrong. What are you doing? Rash is not just I lose my temper. Rash is going backwards. Make a big tumult. Like get on that computer. So all of these.
It sounds like we should be avoiding that, even though it's a positive thing.
I don't think we should be avoiding it. I think the chiddush of Reb Tzadok is we should accept it and embrace it in our life, because that's the madregas we have to go through. I think that's not about avoiding it. If you're learning Torah Lishma, and even maybe this is Shalai Lishma, which is Ba Lishma, but if you're doing the right thing, these are the things that you're going to, I believe, and I'm putting in my own 2 cents here, that this was a huge chizuk for people over the generations that felt that they're not holding on the madrega of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the answer is that this is the derech that you go on, which is literally one of the examples that Shmuel. You can be whatever. How do I do that? I want to take this, first of all, to this Reb Tzadok. I want to go over, we went over last week, so I just want to go over briefly, and I want to take this to a really, possibly a very deep Kabbalistic place, which, forgive the expression, the worst kind of Kabbalah, but it's the only way to understand this, and I'm doing this not to become the Kabbalah, but only to understand Pshat. But first, Reb Tzadok. Reb Tzadok says, Ki inyan, this is the second part of it on the new sheet, Ki inyan ruach rash eish shekoidem hakol de Mamadaka. And here's this ruach rash eish, David, to your question. The ruach rash eish shekoidem hakol de Mamadaka, heim hachona, they are the preparatory stages, l'sharish hayichud v'hadvekus b'Hashem echad. They are what's getting us to, and here's a new way of looking at Kol Mamadaka, Hashem Echad. I explained this last week, I'll just repeat it. That think of it as a triangle. So when you're getting to the spitz, everything is Echad, right? On the point on the top, everything's Echad. Here you have 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, keeps on going. But when you get to the top, everything's Echad. Hashem Echad means there's no stress, there's no tension. Everything is good. There's not a toiv and a ra that I have to now be mitmoded with this tov and ra. When you get to the place of Kol Mamadaka, Alza still. There's no tumult over here. Yitzhahara says like this. My Yitzhar Tov says like this. My Nefesh Bahamas says like this. My Nefesh Elikus says like this. These people are Yitzhahara. These are Rishayim. These are Tzadikim. V'chula v'chula. It doesn't have to be that way. But that's the place of Kol Mamadaka. So how do you get there? Heim hachana l'sharish hayichud, to get to the place of Echad. That's how you know you're there, when you understand Gamzu l'toiva. When you understand the yisoid of Kol Man David Rachman l'tav David, v'adveikus b'Hashem echad. You're Davik and Hashem echad. Yes, everybody with me? Ki ruach hu atshuka. Ki ruach. That's that first one. That first step of coming into Yiddishkeit. You know, maybe people here are Balei Tshuva or no Balei Tshuva. You could see this. Mamish, you could see it. It's harder to see with an FFB because it's maybe, I don't know if they ever go through the process, but if they do, it's over a lot of years. But sometimes you can see it right away, like come in Ruach, like comes in with Ruach, and then with Rash, and then with Eish. So what is that Ruach? So says the Pri Tzaddik, Ruach hu atshuka v'harotzain. This insurmountable, unstoppable rutzon that a person has. B'tchilas haknisa la'kedusha. Remember Tzidkas Hatzadik Aleph. That first surge of energy, rutzain and shuka, he calls it. Shuka v'rutzain. Shazu b'toykef gadol. And here he quotes his source, K'di'isa b'rekeach ein choyzek k'chasidus b'tchilas. Nothing like chasidus when it starts off. We are all very excited and passionate. Passion. Now, here he goes through the avos. Now, I want to show you something if you have the sheet, which I hope you do. So on the back, I enlarged the chart that we made. I believe this is the first chart in history, which talks about, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 examples of the sholosh, all match up to Eliyahu Navi's Ruach, Rash, and Eish, and called Mamadaka. And this is sheet 1 of our Excel sheet, and sheet 2 has another 6 or 7 which get into a deeper place, which we're going to get back into at Tzidkas Hatzadik. So just keep an eye on this. We have with Eliyahu, Ruach, Rash, Eish, Kol Mamadaka. And going back to this Pri Tzaddik, he talks about, this is one of my examples here, is the Avos. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, as we all know, and then Moshe. So just look at the chart for a second. Avraham is Ruach, Yitzchak is Rash, Yaakov is Eish, and Moshe Rabbeinu is first called to Mamadaka. Yeah? So if you look at this, he explains. This huge passion and energy that takes place at the beginning of a spiritual project, at the beginning of the flight, where you got to turn on all the engines. There's no floating over here. That ruach. We see this by Avraham Avinu. Shenadva rucha yeritzaynai lahafgir atzmai keneged kol malchei oretz. This man was at war. He was at war with his family. He was an iconoclast, diverse, breaking idols all over the place, getting himself in trouble, running into kivshon ha'esh. Nothing bothered him. He was on fire. But he wasn't fire. He was Ruach. That was Ruach. Unbelievable ratzon to change the world and fix the world. He took on all the 31 kings of Eretz Yisrael. Keneged kol malchei aretz b'msiras nefesh kedei lefarsei malchusa yisbarach shmai. Behu rak. But let's not get carried away with Avraham Avinu. We don't lead our lives in all senses by Avraham Avinu. Hurak haderech va'achana lavei ledivrei Torah. That's only the first step of the beginning of Yiddishkeit. Avraham Avinu, like we always say, niskat nahadoros, right? Like Mosai agia maisai lamaisa Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov. But then think about that expression for a moment. It doesn't say, what am I going to get to? One place it says, Lamaisa Avoisai. But the Gemara spells out, Lamaisa Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. When am I going to go on this ta'alich, on this journey, on this process of Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov? That's what it means. Not when am I going to become like Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov. So he says that Avraham Avinu was the first hachana, ruach, Lavei l'divrei Torah, ka'amrim zal ba'avais kach darka shel Torah pasu melech teichel, and there you'll also find the 3. Va'acher haruach rash hu b'chinas midasei shel Yitzchak. Okay, what comes after Avraham Avinu? Yitzchak Avinu, and Yitzchak Avinu was Rash. What's Rash? Ma Rash. So Rash, I explained this last week, and I'll explain it again. Haflagas hayira v'harada ketargum al rash mishrias malache zeya v'al zeyas hurash. Thunder, fear, trepidation. That's how he touches up Rash. I am really afraid. I am really scared. Exactly. Brachos Nimches. So, I explained last week, which I think was good pshat, that where Avraham Avinu was teaching the world that there's the existence of Hashem, Mitzius Hashem, good to know. It's not mechayev us to anything until Yitzchak Avinu comes along and says, "Oh, 1 second, I have Yirah Shamayim." If what my father taught the world is true, and of course he did believe it was true, so okay, I see everybody disappeared. If it's correct, so then we have to take to the next step of Yirah Shamayim.
We learned with you at one point in Nefesh Chaim, you mentioned about Kehillas Yitzchak. It's called Akeda because it's combining the middle of Avraham and Yitzchak.
Thank you for mentioning that. That's an excellent comment, and I'm just going to go over it in one sentence. Thank you for remembering that Akedas Yitzchak means the bonding of Yitzchak. What are we getting so excited about the bonding? It should be like the almost binding. Thank you, of Yitzchak. Why is that the Nakuda? And I explained, the Ramchal explains, not I, that the binding is the binding of Yitzchak to the Mizbeach, but Avraham to Yitzchak. Midas HaChesed with Midas HaGvura. Midas HaGvura with Midas HaChesed. Midas HaAva, as he says, with Midas HaYira. So it's all coming together now with Yitzchak. He's taking that idea of Metzius Hashem, yes, Yoni? He's taking this idea of Metzius Hashem and now putting it Lamaisa, which is Yira Charada. So it goes from the passion for the truth, and Avraham Avinu, it says he did it, Asa as emes mipnei shehu emes. He did the truth because it was truth, but Yitzchak came with a different thing. What does that machayev us to do? What do we have to do? The Yir Shamayim says I have to go sit on that akeder, or lay down on that mizbeach. The Yir Shamayim says that I have to do mitzvos. So he brought it lemaisa, and that's where we got to last week. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Yaakov is Eish. Ma kesher Eish. So he brings us a pasuk. Acher arash Eish, hu bechinas Yaakov Avinu, olav shalom. Okay, we're all familiar with that pasuk. We see Yaakov is Eish. Shuin yindvekas ba yisparach shmai berispe Eish. V'hine al kol ela madregas nemar, and this is the pshat in last week's parsha. Va'era el Avram el Yitzchak ve'el Yaakov, that Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, I've appeared to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but they were only achanu. Shmi Hashem lo noidati lahem. Which I always learned, Pashat Pshat, and that probably is the Pashat Pshat. Pashat Pshat in the pasuk is that Hashem was scolding Moshe Rabbeinu. What, you're better than Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov? But what Reb Tzadok is teaching us is that no, yes, you are better. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are the hachana to Torah. You're going to do Torah itself. You're going to actually do the Torah itself. You're going to be one ba'achdos u'beyichud Hashem. I want to now step back and try to explain for a moment what is the pshat in Yaakov Avinu being Eish. Avram, I feel like I understand a little bit. Yitzchak, I feel like I understand a little bit. You're Shemayim. What is Eish? What was Yaakov? Just think about this with me for a minute. Yaakov, we know Yaakov went through Esav. We know Yaakov went through Lavan. We know Yaakov went through Yosef. Mechiras Yosef. We know Yaakov came to Mitzrayim. What does that have to do with Eish? I'm asking a direct question. Eish. Eish is not Eish. What is Eish?
Eish combines, can only work if there are a few things working together. Like it has to be, it has to be heat, has to be material and fuel. Is that, Yaakov was combining maybe Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov together?
Okay.
You can say that Eish purifies.
So you're a fireman, aren't you?
Yeah, that's where
Yeah, that's how you know that. Okay. Yeah. What are you saying, Philip?
I said Eish purifies.
Eish purifies. So let's open up for a moment.
H also takes something which is physical and makes it spiritual. Taking something which is
Makes it nothing.
right.
So H has, I think everybody's saying, sort of getting to the same point. H is sort of like distills things to its finest components.
He says here, it's Tzidkas. How does that H lead to Tzidkas?
What does H have to do with Tzidkas? Except that we know that you use fire to put two things together. That's how you weld.
The Moshe used to like this. All Bira Delekas used to say.
Yes, I remember the Biro Dolev, but it's not answering the question yet.
Everything is consumed.
Maybe-
But that's Avraham. Avraham
Maybe we could say about Rash and about Ruach that they are something which is acting on an object that they don't become part of that object. They're something separate from, we hear Rash, we feel Ruach, but Eish actually engages, integrates, it's one process with the person who's experiencing it or with the.
So you're also saying the sort of welding of two.
Yeah.
So let me just go to the Makor. We should know what this is talking about anyway, because we quote the pasuk and we say it in our Torah. But the pasuk of V'haya Yaakov la'esh v'Yosef l'hava comes from Ovadia, Sefer Ovadia. Ovadia was a Navi. By the way, it's very easy to find things in Ovadia because Ovadia has only one parak. You could always say I know exactly what parak it is in Ovadia. And Ovadia, the Navi, speaks about just about all he speaks about is what the Chazon Ovadia, he talks about the future Geula, the Geula we're going to experience. And he talks about how, I guess the important thing is, with all of the torture that the Jewish people has gone through all the generations, and with all the Yaakov Esav, Yaakov Yishmael, and the existence of the Jewish people has been a forever existence, yet a struggling existence, a very struggling existence, a very painful existence. So here he speaks about the end of times. And he's very graphic about it. And he says, I'm just going to Pasuk Tesvav, Hikarev Yoim Hashem al kol hagoyim. The day of, the goyim like to say the day of reckoning, but Hikarev Yom Hashem, the day of God. Karev Yoim Hashem al kol hagoyim. Kasher asisa ye'aselach. Like you did, that's what's going to be done to you. Gmolcha yashu v'reishecha. What exactly, this is a tit for tat. Avadia says in the name of Hashem, Koyamar Hashem, that all the nations of the world that have so tortured us will get exactly Kigmulcha Yashu B'Reishecha, come right back on you. Kikasher Shisisem al Harkachi, just like you invaded the Beis HaMikdash, Yishtu Kol Hagoyim Tamid V'Shasu V'Lo V'Hayu Kolei Hayu. That's how the invasion will take place the other way, from the Beis HaMikdash out. Ubahar Tzion Tia Pleta V'Haya Kodesh. Har Tzion will have a pleta. V'Haya Kodesh V'Yarshu Beis Yaakov Es Marasheim. And the Klal Yisrael, the Bnei Yisrael, when the Mashiach is about to arrive, as Rashi says, will reconquer the Har Habayis. And there will be war on the Har Habayis as to who this belongs to. But the end of the war will be Bar Tzion Tia Pleta. It's going to be emptied out. V'Haya Kodesh. It will end up being Kodesh. V'Yarshu Beis Yaakov Es Moira Shehem. And the Beis Yaakov will once again inherit what is rightfully theirs. Says the Navi, V'Haya Beis Yaakov. It's at that point. Like you can read the Sefer Ovadia, or you could read the Jerusalem Post. This is like happening in the world. And at that time, says the Navi, at that time, V'hoya Beis Yaakov Eish Beis Yosef Lehava. Beis Yaakov will be an Eish, and Beis Yosef, Yaakov's son, obviously, will be the flame of the fire. In other words, let's take a fire and divide it into two parts. We have the Eish and the Lahava, that which spreads and that which goes out. Ubeis Esav Lakash, and in that scenario, the Beis Esav, all those that have tortured the Jewish people, will be a kash, piece of straw. The Dolku Bahem Va'acholum, and the fire will reach them and destroy them. La'yeh Sarid L'Beis Esav, and there won't even be a remnant of that philosophy and that anti-Semitism, that racism, Ki Hashem Diber, because we'll come to the point where Hashem has spoken. And the graph, it's not for us right now, but it's one parak in Ovadia, read it. V'yarshu HaNegev as Haresav, how this is going to spread to the Negev and to the Plishtim, and the stay Ephraim, the stay Shomron, it's going to go into the Shomron and to Binyamin as Hagila. This is going to spread through this energy of this belongs to us, is going to spread through all the different, every different part of Eretz Yisrael. And then even further. The main reason, the main thing we learn from here for our sake, for our purposes, is that when we say Yaakov is Eish, where specifically the reference is the time of the Geula. The time of the Geula and what that's going to look like is the time of Kol Mamadaka. What Ovadia is talking about is specifically that we've gone through a stage of Avraham, of Yitzchak, and now we're up to Yaakov, and Yaakov is Eish. So we can say all kinds of drushes, yes, about the Eish does this and Eish does that, but which is all true. But the ikar point of what this is all Gemara in Bava Basra, at the end of Bava Basra, which talks about this, is the ikar point is that when we're up to Yaakov, because Yaakov Lukalis is a case, when we're up to Yaakov in history, which is, I believe we could say our time, which is at the end of Golus. So there's going to be an Eish, and this is the Eish that Ovadia is first describing, yes?
It seems like it's consuming evil. That's what
consuming evil, well said. Consuming evil. This is not going to only happen, says the Navi, interpreted by the Gemara Bava Basra, Kufchaf, I think, is not only done by Yaakov alone, Yaakov ish oalim. Yaakov is sitting himself, but it's going through Yosef. Beis Yosef Lahava. Yosef, at the end of time, is going to be the flame, which is doing this consuming.
Rabbi, what's the difference between Eish and Lehava?
So I think the way I'm understanding it, it's a very important question actually, but the way I'm understanding it is that you can have an element which is called Eish, let's say in Hilchos Shabbos, it's just electricity. But if you put a piece of a match to it, you have a Lahava, right? So we have I don't know the scientific terms, but you have the Eish and then the Lahava, which is causing that Eish to spread and not be contained. So Yosef, his purpose here is to spread. Now, you know how there's Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. So let me just point out something very, very important, in case you don't realize this. That this whole nevuah of Ovadia is not the Geula, it's pre the Geula. Right, the Hachana for the Geula. We're still holding by Yaakov, we're not holding by Moshe Rabbeinu. Or to put it in terms that we're more familiar with, we're still holding by Mashiach ben Yosef and not by Mashiach ben David. The Mashiach ben David is the Kol Mamadaka, which is B'diuk, as the Malbim explains, why David HaMelech could not build the Beis HaMikdash, because there wasn't enough Kol Mamadaka. It has to go Zarei. That also needs to go through different emanations until it gets to the David, which is called Mamadaka. But if we see now the nevuah of Ovadia come true, the consuming of Esav, the consuming of Ra, this is not the Geula. This is the Hachana for the Geula. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Yosef it's the end of the beginning. It's the end of the consuming of Ra. Yosef Haya b'Mitzrayim, but it's not the Geula. Geula is after Yosef. In a way, which is something that Reb Tzadok says over and over and over again. That Niskat Na'adoros on the one hand, and on the other hand, like history proceeds, and as the way it's always said is that if you're a little person standing on the shoulder of a giant, you see even further than the giant. So the Niskat Na'adoros is true, but on the other hand, we're seeing so far, and we're this. By the way, one of the things that Avadya doesn't say is that this is going to be easy. Not necessarily easy.
What does the Aish do without the Rava?
It's contained. So first the Aish has to be developed, and that's, I believe, the Yaakov Yosef Ohalim. But Yaakov himself didn't fight with Esav. He didn't consume Esav. But he had the koach. He was able to give that koach to his sons, and specifically to Yosef. By the way, with the Gemara, I'm here just to be thorough. Didn't bring the Gemara, but it's fine. Trust me on this. The Gemara says that Yosef Lahava, specifically because it's talking about the Bnei Rachel, which was Yosef and Binyamin. So the emes is that Yosef could have carried this out and Binyamin could have carried this out. And that's why when Yaakov Avinu thought he lost Yosef, he was very shomer on Binyamin. Yosef Einenu. And you're going to take Binyamin away from it. Those were the Bnei Rachel. And this was, by the way, all of the Alpi Sifrei Emes, this was the whole sort of favoritism you see of Yaakov to Rachel. And that's because Rachel was the one who was ushering in the Geula. She was buried there too. She was buried on Al Derech for the Golan.
Binyamin fights Amalek.
Shaul. So the reason why Binyamin can't be the Mashiach is because Shaul did not fight Amalek correctly. He goofed up with Amalek.
Wasn't Mordecai attacking?
Okay, we can. It's almost Purim time, but I'm saying that I'm just telling you what the Maharal Miprag says, and if you look in your Ein Yaakov at the end of Baba Basra on this Gemara, so in the side you're zocha to the Maharal and the Nesivos, and there he explains that it's really Yosef and Binyamin, but it ends up being Mashiach ben Yosef, not Mashiach ben Binyamin, because Binyamin, because Shaul Sheva Binyamin didn't do what he was supposed to do in the consuming of Ra. Exactly in this Nakuda of consuming of Ra. Yeah, is everybody with me?
Is there a Maila of Aish without Rava?
I guess it gives warmth and it could cook things, but it's not destroying. Aish doesn't destroy onto itself. So Yaakov wasn't a destroyer. I mean, I leave this to you. I mean, you can guess as well as I can, but
How does Aish not destroy?
When we speak of
this is Aish.
Esav, do we mean all of non-Jewish civilization,
including Yishmael, or is it something specific about Western civilization? Yitzchak, Esav and Yishmael is the same thing. Esav married Bas Yishmael, Basmas Bas Yishmael. And at that point, there became an integration of Esav and Yishmael. And the Maharal speaks about this and says that sometimes our Tzaras come from the Western civilization and sometimes it comes from the Bnei Yishmael. And they both come at us at different ways and at different times and sometime together. You know, the Gedolim spoke so clearly when Hitler, Yimach Shemoy v'Zichroi, made contact with the Mufti. And the Gedolim spoke about this is where you see Esav and Yishmael coming together. It's by the way, it's such an experience, such a Jewish experience, to see the happenings of history the way they are al pi Torah. It's an unbelievable thing to see how this was all called out in advance, and even more been fascinating to see is how we are history. We are part of. We're sitting right here in Beit Shemesh. We are part of the. Yeah.
Did Esav marry back into the line of Yishmael in some sort of attempt to get back some sort of Abraham covenant?
For sure. I'll give you a reference. I wrote a whole book about it.
Rebbe, what was the question?
The name of the book? was there a bedafka between Esav and Yishmael trying to connect those two things. And it was all about who's grabbing the tikkun and Hagar. Okay, not for us. I want to get into the beginning of something very deep, and please hold on to this chart, because I had this kasha. I'm going to give you a kasha and a teretz, and then we'll go into it, time permitting. The Malbim, if you recall, when we started learning the story of Eliyahu Navi, wrote, and I read it to you, that this Ruach, Rash, Eish, the three Madregas, he says that's Keneged the Shalosh Klipos Hatmeyos. And when I read that, we all said, okay, that's Kabbalah. It's Keneged the Shalosh Klipos Hatmeyos. I'll explain the Shalosh Klipos Hatmeyos Lefi my hasaga in a moment. And the Malbim goes on to say that there was a Musar Shmuz here to Eliyahu Navi, that, you know, like you're a big kanoi and you're running against the Ovdei Avodah Zarah and against the Melech Achav and Izavel and all that. Just take it easy. That's how the Malbim learns it. Just take it easy. Lo Baruch Hashem, Lo Barach Hashem. It's not the way you should be. But then he throws this Kabbalistic idea at us of the Gimel Klipos Hatmeyos. I tell you, like, the Sefer HaTanya in Perek Aleph and Perek Vav and Perek Zayin talks about the Shalosh Klipos Hatmeyos, and he says, and a Klipas Noga. So there's 4 Klipos altogether. Just bear with me with the words for a minute. It says about Latanya that Shalosh Klipos Hatmeyos ein bahem toiv klal. There's nothing good about them. The Klipas Noiga is a iruv of toiv v'ra. Perek Zayin, Likutei Amar. And from the Klipas Noiga, you get to the Kedusha. Let me, before we do a deep dive into that, let me just ask my kasha. Ein bahem toiv klal, Shalosh Klipos Hatmeyos, whatever they may be. If ein bahem toiv klal, so why is Reb Tzadok? It's kulei ra. So why is Reb Tzadok telling us we have to go through that? If you'll say that it's hachana, okay, but that's not what, and it doesn't start with the Baal HaTanya. This goes all the way back to the Zayar. Let me give the mashal of the Svarim. Every Sefer says it a little bit differently. I could tell you the way I learned it in school. That if you'll take a peanut, a peanut is corrugated, you know? So like a box. And there's little strings going through the shell. And that's why when you dye them, they're not all smashed together. This is Niflois HaBoyer. Like a box. A box, it's not that Hashem learned from boxes. The box makers learned from Hashem. Wow, that's how you keep some little strings, right? You can see those strings. Then you have the shell. And you open up the peanut, and you have the peanut. But the peanut also has a shell, a peel, a wrapping. The Lashon of the Zayar, if you take a peanut, egos he talks about. He says, if you keep that little wrapping on the nut, you can eat it. But if you separate them, there's nothing to do with that thing, ela perish ba'almuhu. So you just throw it away. Like you can't just eat the red wrapper around the peanut. So, but on the other hand, somehow it could be bottled to the peanut. So I'm not a peanutologist, but I do want to give you that image of Shalosh Klipos Hatmeyos. The kasha is, if these things ein bahem toiv klal, you can't eat a shell. You can't eat a peanut shell. You just cannot eat it. Even the elephants spit them out. You can't eat a peanut shell. Ein by toiv klal. So why is Reb Tzadok telling us, well, you have to go, don't be mevaz. Why is he telling us this is Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Okay, they're hachanas for Kedusha, but they're not psilos.
Reb Tzadok has to be agreeing with the album?
It's a Zayar, which I'll show you. It's certainly in Balatanya.
Not the Ein Behem Tov Kal, but that the...
That wasn't.
That the Ruach, Rash, and Ish is not built to the...
Oh, that's a Zayar. That's a Zayar too, which I'm going to read to you, but probably next week. Zayar Parshas Vayakel, Mefurish. I thought it was a Malbim. Mefurish in the Zayar. But let me just say a Yisai. First I thought, well, there must be a Machlokes. Whether the Shalosh Klipos Hatmeis have any toiv in it, or they don't. Ein behem toiv klal. And then I realized that it doesn't have to be a machlokus, or maybe it is a machlokus, but it doesn't have to be a machlokus. But let's understand the basic quintessential Reb Tzadok is that there is no Ra. Ra is not Ra. You can call it Ra, but it's like the Yetzer Hara. And yet the Torah tells us, B'chol levavcha, b'shnei yitzrecha. And this is the whole shot in Reb Tzadok throughout. This is the whole controversy around Reb Tzadok and the Izvitcher. That's Ishbitz. Reb Tzadok articulated it even more. That the Ra is not evil as we think about it. You can't call Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov evil. And they were connected to Shalosh Klipos Hatmeis. But the pshat is that it's a protection device which is inedible unto itself. And that's the pshat. And think about this deeply for a moment, because I'm gonna bring you the sources. But what the whole chidush, if you will, of the school of Reb Tzadok is that even if you did Ra, it's a building block. Don't we say that if you do tshuva me'ava, zdonos nasa k'schuyos? Echzeh. How could it possibly be that zdonos becomes schuyos? And the answer is that if you do an avera b'mezid and unto itself, you've done a terrible thing. You've destroyed the world. If afterwards you come to your senses and you do tshuva, then that avera that was done deliberately and was evil can somehow be taken and turned around into something tov as a building block for good. I don't feel personally that Reb Tzadok is as controversial as he's made. He's not extolling Averas. He's not telling people to do Averas in order to be able to eventually do good. He's saying that there's a process. If we look at the Shalosh Klipos Hatmeis, the way they're described in the Zohar, and I would like to do that dive with you, it's 3 levels of protection that surround the Etzem Hadavar. One of the examples, the Zohar, it's all in Parshas Vayakel. And in Vayakel, he's mefarish the Divrei Eliyahu. And let me just end with an easy thing, the Ma'aseh Merkava. The whole Shalosh Klipos Hatmeis is learned from Yecheskel chapter 1. Vayhi b'shloshim shana b'revi b'chamisha l'chodesh. Yecheskel came to Bavel, and in Bavel he had his nevuah, earth-shattering nevuah. Haya dvar Hashem al Yecheskel ben Buzi HaKohen be'eretz kastim al nahar kvar. Vatihi olav yad Hashem. Now listen carefully. This is how Yecheskel described his nevuah, the Ma'aseh Merkava. Va'era, I looked and I saw, v'hine ruach sa'ara, ba minatzafai. First I saw ruach, then I saw anon gadol, I saw a big cloud. Then I saw ve'esh mislakachas, I saw esh, Yecheskel describing. And then v'noiga loy saviv, and then I saw the noiga, umi toicha, and inside that noga, ke'ein hachashmal mitoicha esh. Chashmal is, we call electricity chashmal, but chashmal is a malach of esh. Electricity was brilliantly named, like chashmal. But the word comes from Sefer Yecheskel. From this pasuk, the Zohar teaches us that there were stages to that Yecheskel was describing the doorways that he had to enter before he got to the place of the Merkava and the Chashmal. And the first one was Ruach, which is Ruach, tornado. And the second one was Anan, which the Zohar says is the same as Rash. And the third one was Eish, which is the same as Eish. And then inside the Eish was V'noiga. Noga means what? Light or like a shine. And the words we have to stell on, V'noiga loy saviv umitoicha ge'ena hachashmal. Comes the Zohar, not the Balatanya, not the Zohar, and the Zohar explains that this is referring to 3 Klipos that Yecheskel had to get through as his hachana to the Meiser Merkava, yes? And then the 4th finally came to the Klipos Noga, which gets its energies, as the Zohar, both from the outside and from the inside. The Balatanya is Meirach on this. The Klipos Noga, so it's shining and it's not shining. It's an Eruv of Toiv V'Ra. So Yecheskel is not admitting, but explaining that in his Nevuah, he came to Bavel, he had to get through these 3 Klipos. And by the way, Rashi always does the job. And Rashi, over here, I just started learning it, is Mamash Divrei Kabbalah. Rashi explains this al pi Divrei Kabbalah. And he explains, if you look at it carefully, he even explains the Klipos, the Babylonians. So, the exile, the Churban Beis Hamikdash, the Klipos. You have to get through these 3 Klipos in order to get to the Klipos Noga, which is an Eruv of Toiv V'Ra. You have to get through Ruach, Rash, and Eish to get to the Kol de Mamadaka. It comes out in Cheshman that the Kol de Mamadaka is the Klipos Noga. Because I said at the beginning, the Kol de Mamadaka is not Hashem, but you already have the shining from Hashem in this world. So the Klipos Noga is the place where you want to get to. So we have to stop thinking about Klipos as like bad things, even though the Zohar and later all the Sifrei Kabbalah and Machshava all tell us that Ein Bahem Eruv Toiv Klal. That doesn't mean that they're bad things to go through. It's like the Yetzer Hara. It's pure Gashmias, let's call it, which are protective. Do you want the peanuts to have a shell or not? What I just want to end with this thought. One of the Misholim that the Zohar gives in Parshas Vayakov, which Mir Hashem will learn together, if you're up to it, one of the is the Moach, because when you go inside, so it's called Moichin of Kedusha, and you'll see on the chart, that keeps on going here, the 3, but so the Zohar says that if one to get to the Moach from the outside to the inside, one has to penetrate through 3 levels until you get to the moach itself, to the brain itself. Okay, so nudnik that I am, I Googled it. I just, does the brain, we know the brain is protected, right? How's it protected? It's protected exactly with 3 identified, the skull and 2 other parts that protect the brain until you get to the brain itself. It's like one of the Misholim of the Zohar. Just Google the anatomy of the protection of the brain. It's exactly what I Googled. It's so amazing. It's like a peanut. You see this? These are the corrugation. The protect. It is. It's the same corrugation that's on the outside of the peanut. So although most of us that are in like my situation say that grass doesn't grow on a busy street, and that's why we don't have any hair. Nevertheless, maybe you need less protection when you get older. I don't know how it works, but what is clear is that every mushal, I just want to make this point, it's almost a side point, but every mushal of the Zohar, and I found already 3 of them, egois, the whole story of the whole mushal of Meir and Reb Meir and Acher, Egois Matzasi, Rimoin Matzasi, Tamar Matzasi, 3 places in Chazal. Those 3 are in the Zohar over here. And it all comes to the Shalosh Klipos HaTameis. Nobody's saying it's bad. An orange has a peel. Inside the peel, there's a white peel or whatever that's called. And around the orange itself, there's a little corrugation. You can take it off, you can eat it. Everything has these shalosh klipos hatmeis, ubetoicha called the Mamadaka. And so this is Gufa, the teaching of Reb Tzadok. This is not a steer to Reb Tzadok. This is the teaching of Reb Tzadok that don't call the Ra. It's something you need. It's something we need to get through. It's something we need to penetrate. It's good. Thank God it's there. It's there to penetrate so we can get to the Etzem Hadavar, which is called Mamadaka, which is Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Hachana to Moshe Rabbeinu. So Yaakov was the Aish, which is the consuming of evil, together with Yosef until we get to peace. Sar HaSholom. We get to peace. And that's the ultimate Mashiach. We'll talk. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming. And for all of those that couldn't come, a refuah shalem.
Thank you. Good job.
Issues papers, so let's be honest.
Thank you very, very much.
Shalom, Rabbi Yaakov. Shalom.
Thank you. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Amen. We didn't discuss what daca means.
It's not yet called the Mamadaka. Called the Mamadaka is beyond the
More serious.
On another note, any update from China in terms of